Breakfast today is my blueberry oatmeal. I have a half a cup of oats, 1 cup of blueberries, 2 tablespoons of the flax hemp chia seed mix, 1 tablespoon of pumpkin seeds, 1 tablespoon of coconut chips, and 1 scoop of the vanilla cream protein powder. So that is my breakfast today. It is 8 points, yes, 8 points and 315 calories. Here's what the trolley looks like. Well, I decided to come for lunch. I know, I brought my own, but I felt like eating out. So I am eating at the Village Tavern.
So we're only 7 years away from celebrating our 400th anniversary. And Salem grew into a major seaport. So Salem was a town full of... Now, on your right, this fountain is called the Eastern Fountain, and it commemorates Salem's China trade, which ran through an arch. And that's how Salem became, by the first census of 1790, it became the richest town in America. Salem, because of the sea trade, was richer than Baltimore and New York and Philadelphia and Charleston, South Carolina. We were the 6th largest in population. This is the Essex Street Pedestrian Mall. There's a lot of magic stores here, a lot of rich stores, souvenir stores, and they don't allow any vehicles except for the trolley and a few delivery trucks. Now, 2 doors down here is the Hotel Salem, our newest hotel, and it's become a very popular place because they have a rooftop bar, which might interest you later on today. And here's our the first of like 14 stops that we have here on the trolley. It's a trolley depot. It's a souvenir shop. Now, let's see.
This is my favorite store.
There's a very good selection, and you can see that it's built. It's actually, this large building was a custom house that was built in 1805.
Oh, I saw you on my mirror.
Hello. Oh, can you pass that back? Or I think I should pass it back with you. You can just pass them back. We have plenty of those. So coming up on your left is this building with the white front. It was built as a bank building in 1811, and it was designed by the famous American architect Charles W. Bulfinch, who also did the New State House in Boston. And here's a Red Sandwich Shop. They are the most popular place in town for breakfast and lunch, but they only take cash and they close at 3. And they're located in a very old building that was known as the London Coffee House before the American Revolution. So the Sons of Liberty would actually gather there and discuss what to do about King George III. Salem has hundreds and hundreds of very old, well-preserved buildings. Now we're on Charter Street now, and we're coming up on the oldest cemetery in Salem, the Charter Street Cemetery, sometimes called the Old Burying Point. Now this is the 2nd oldest cemetery in all of America. Only the one in Plymouth is older than this one. There's about 500 people buried there, mostly Puritans from the first 100 years or so. 2 of those Puritans were judges at the Salem witch trials of 1692, Bartholomew Gedney and John Haythorne, who was known as the hanging judge, and he was also Nathaniel Hawthorne's great-great-grandfather. Captain Richard Moore, who was a Mayflower passenger, who then moved from Plymouth to Salem and died here. He's buried here, and it's actually the only documented grave of a Mayflower passenger anywhere in the world. You would think it would be some in Plymouth, but there aren't any. And everybody loves to go to that cemetery because the gravestones are so old. So talk, literally. They dragged him to a field 300 yards from here, laid him on his back, put a board on top of his chest, and put heavy stones on top of that, thinking that would force him to say something. Well, he just looked at the sheriff, who was Sheriff George Corwin, and said, "More weight." And so they put heavier stones on top of him. He still didn't talk, except this went on for 2.5 days where they kept on adding heavier stones. And during this time, he cursed the sheriff, and who died suddenly of a heart attack at age 30, just 4 years later. And then he cursed the town of Salem for doing this to him. And they say that the ghost of Giles Corey has appeared before all of the major fires that have broken out here in Salem over the years. Finally, he died, and they say his very last words were, "More weight." Then he died, and he was 81 years old when they tortured him to death. 2 days later, they hanged his wife, Martha Corey, for witchcraft, partly based on testimony that Giles had given in court. He never blamed her. He never said she was a witch. But he mentions things that he probably shouldn't have mentioned, like she didn't seem to say her prayers every night. You know, it didn't take much during that crazy year of witchcraft hysteria to cause people to think you were a witch. No one was ever hanged or punished for witchcraft after September of 1692. The trials went on for a few more months, and a few more people were convicted, but no one else was ever really punished for that. So the Pirate Museum is over there. And, okay, so back when Salem was the most important port in America, we had 40 to 50 wharves here. Enjoy. So we're turning into Pickering Wharf, and then the next stop will be the House of Seven Gables, and then we'll go up to the ferry, just to give you an idea of what's going to happen here. So back when Salem was such a big port, we had 40 to 50 wharfs, and there's only 3 that still remain, and Pickering Wharf is one of those. It's very, very old, but it doesn't look that old because it burned to the ground in 1914. It was here way before the American Revolution. So what you're going to see here are a lot of fairly new buildings, like the Waterfront Hotel and a lot of retail stores and condos and marinas. And the worst speed bumps in Salem are right here. Some of the harbor tours leave from back here. And we also have some of the best restaurants in Salem are right here on Pickering Wharf, including 2 of my favorites. Now, Ed's doing his best to spare us the pain of these speed bumps, but they seem to get bigger every year. We kind of think they might be haunted. All right, yeah, somebody asked about longboards. We're coming up on longboards, which has great lobster rolls. Here's a couple of witch stores over here.
Okay, guys, there you go.
All right, enjoy your lunch.
All right.
And that amazing ship over there, that tall ship, is a replica of a Swedish ship from the early 1600s that just came into Salem, I think 2 days ago, or maybe it was yesterday. It hasn't been here for very long. In fact, I'm seeing it really for the first time. I'm not sure how long it's going to be in Salem either. So this is our stop on Pickering Wharf at the Sea Level Oyster Bar. Shop up on your right is a witch store called Enchanted, and look at the purple poster in the window. That's Laurie Cabot. She is the official witch of Salem and has been for a very, very long time. She's coming to Salem for Halloween, this Halloween, but she's 86 years old now. So it seems likely that someday we're going to have to choose a new official witch of Salem, and nobody knows how that's going to go. Now, I think men should be eligible because the word witch applied to both men and women back in the old days. But for sure, you're going to have to be a real witch.
This is where I come with Kristen and Doug.
Religion.
And we play Wizards Unite
I'm
and
really looking forward
Pokemon.
to the,
It's a
I don't know,
great
what
walk
do you call it?
all the way down to the
Camping? I don't
lighthouse
know.
down the
So
end.
this is the Salem Maritime National Historic
sit on
Site.
those
The
chairs
National
over
Park
there.
Service has been preserving our waterfront area since 1938. Okay, now you notice there's another ship out there too. That's the Friendship of Salem, which is it's a replica of a 1797 East India trading ship, and it's kind of a symbol of Salem. It's been here for many years, but it's been missing for the last 3. It had to get refitted up in Gloucester, and it just came back a few months ago. And this summer they're going to be putting the masts back on the Friendship. In fact, you can see the masts. They're lying right here on the grass. And you can walk out there too and go on. I think they're letting you walk onto the Friendship now.
Yeah, I've seen
The Friendship is, if you look really carefully, you can see that figurehead at the bow of the ship. And it's tied up to Derby Wharf, which is a very old wharf built in 1762. And it goes half a mile out into the harbor. And you can walk out there if you like. Now, it's called Derby Wharf because it served the ships that belonged to the Derby family. Now, a lot of things around here are named for the Derbys, including Derby Street right here. Now, you know, just imagine tall ships like being loaded to go out to Brazil and Europe, and other ships coming in from India and China and maybe even Japan and the East Indies, which we now call Malaysia and Indonesia. So when a ship came in, the custom house would leap into action and bring these huge human-sized scales out to the ship to weigh and measure everything so everything would be properly taxed. And that was the job of the custom house. Here's our famous custom house with the golden eagle at the top. That was built in 1819, the last custom house built here in Salem. And Nathaniel Hawthorne worked on the first floor, left-hand side, in the 1840s during the time he was writing the Scarlet Letter. This brick building here on your left is the Derby House, built in 1762, making it the oldest brick house in Salem. And that's where Elias Haskett Derby and his wife Elizabeth Crowninshield Derby lived. Now, he became America's first millionaire. He had a ship named the Grand Turk, which was the first American ship to trade with China directly. He made an unbelievable amount of money. In fact, well, he died in 1799, but he is still on the list of the 75 richest people who ever lived. Now, right behind us is the oldest candy store in America.
If you ever come to Salem, this is the first place you should stop at, is the House of Seven
This is the House
Gables.
of Seven Gables, and this is a big stop. Seven Gables is now 351 years old, which makes it the 6th oldest house in Salem. So that might make you wonder, well, then what's the oldest house in Salem, right? It's the gift store there. The gift store, the House of the Seven Gables, is the oldest house in Salem. It's the retired Beckett house built in 1655, and they moved it there to save it from destruction, and it became the gift shop. And they have a wonderful bookstore in there, by the way. They also moved Nathaniel Hawthorne's birthplace to the property and the Hooper Hathaway house, too. So it's a wonderful tour. And the house itself is really, I think it's my favorite place to be in Salem because there's a secret staircase that goes up to an attic that really hasn't changed since 1668 when the house was built. Now here's the road to the Salem Ferry. Somebody wanted to get off near the ferry?
Yeah, it's about 200 yards down.
Yeah, it's right down here is the Salem Ferry.
Perfect. Thank you.
The next one
That's
is
a
at
great ride, too.
4 o'clock. Yeah, there's a bar over there called the Landing. But you can kill some time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a good bar.
I don't know, but it's not the best beer selection in town.
Oh,
But
no, but
I know.
Probably the seating is beautiful.
I know. It's a beautiful spot.
Right.
Beautiful spot, sticking out into the harbor. And we've already seen some wonderful boats out there today. So there's old houses all over Salem. It's really, I think, the most remarkable thing about Salem when you're a visitor is when you walk around, you just see hundreds and hundreds of these very old, well-preserved buildings. And a lot of them have these white signs on them that tell you when they were built. Like that one says 1800. So, you know, it's really fun, and the old houses are all over. Okay, so I think I pointed out the Pirate Museum. And since we're passing the sewage treatment plant right now, I think I'll talk about pirates instead. So one of the reasons why we have a pirate museum is that some famous pirates did sail near here, like Blackbeard and Captain Kidd. But of course they sailed all the way down to the West Indies. But the main association of Salem with pirates actually has to do with the American Revolution, believe it or not. Because when that started in 1775, General Washington had the task of defeating the British Army and the British Navy, the greatest navy in the world. And all he had were 10,000 soldiers, and he had 0 ships. So it's kind of like, how did America win that? It had to do with something amazing that happened right around here. The men of Marblehead, Salem, and Beverly formed a volunteer navy by taking their best fishing ships and getting them heavily armed with cannon. And then they went to sea as privateers. Now, the word privateer means a couple of things. One is the ships stayed private. They never belonged to the government. As soon as the war was over, they went right back into commercial trade. The other meaning of the word privateer is they were basically legal pirates. They had permission from the Continental Congress to sink any British ship they could find, or even better, to capture the ship as a prize and bring it back to port. Because then there would be a privateer auction. And the money that was raised would be split between the captain, the crew, and the ship owner, nothing to the government. And there was so much money coming in. There were hundreds of these privateer auctions, and so much money coming in. It was the beginning of Salem's glory days, which lasted up until about 1840. That was the time period when we became the richest town in America. But a lot of ordinary sailors got enough money together to start their own business, to buy their own ships. And if they did, they would probably have ended up incredibly rich and probably building a large mansion here in Salem. All right, so right now we're taking you to Winter Island. On the right, this is a strange body of water. It's called Smith Pool. And it looks kind of odd with a dam out there. And that's because it was once the largest man-made saltwater swimming pool in America. So in a day like today, you'd have hundreds of people going out there to enjoy the water. But you see, on Winter Island, they built a Coast Guard air station in 1938. So when World War II started, they actually felt they had to close down Smith's. So Winter Island here was very important to Salem in the earliest days, like the first 10 years, because this is where the fishing industry got started. The water doesn't freeze around Winter Island in the winter. That's why they call it Winter Island. And so they had big shipyards here and a lot of fishing, and they had a lot of land devoted to drying and salting codfish, because that was the major export to this area before the American Revolution. Okay, so in 1970, they closed down the Coast Guard base, and this became a 30-acre recreational park and Salem's only campground. Still a couple of buildings that go back to the Coast Guard days. We'll see the aircraft hangar in a second. Here's the aircraft hangar. They had seaplanes in there that would take off from the surface of the water. But during the summer, they sometimes turn this into a drive-in movie theater by putting a large movie screen on the side, and people gather here in the parking lot to watch the movies. This summer so far they've shown A Nightmare Before Christmas, and a month ago they showed Jaws. I think because they're having such a big problem with great white sharks on Cape Cod this summer. And last summer, of course, it was the 25th anniversary of Hocus Pocus, that movie that was filmed largely here in Salem, so they were showing Hocus Pocus here too. Now we're here at the entrance to Salem Harbor, and you're probably going to see a lot of really nice boats. Oh yes, in fact, over there is a replica of an 1812 privateer boat. It's called the Fame, F-A-M-E, that schooner that's near the lighthouse. That's a harbor tour. You can actually go on it. But that's a beautiful example. It shows you how small these privateer boats were. They were fishing boats, you know, but they were incredibly successful. They captured 444 British ships during the American Revolution. So there's a big yacht out there that I've never seen before. At least 5 yacht clubs over there. America's Cup yacht race started right off the tip of Marblehead in 1851. So that lighthouse is called Pickering Light, also named for Colonel Timothy Pickering, just like Pickering Wharf is. There's a large island way out there called Baker's Island, and all that's out there now are 55 summer homes that, believe it or not, do not have electricity or running water, and people spend the whole summer out there. Now, through these trees is one of the oldest forts in America. They call it Fort Pickering, but it was built in 1643 to guard the harbor against Dutch and Spanish pirates. And it's so old that there's the remains of a moat there. I think maybe the only moat in America. You can actually see it, maybe you can see it, down in this ditch past the weeds there is what remains of this freshwater moat. So, this is the walkway to Waikiki Beach. Salem has several nice beaches. We aren't known for our beaches, but we do have Waikiki Beach right here in Salem, Massachusetts. Now, you know, people on the trolley from Hawaii have told me that they have a Waikiki Beach. It's kind of hard to imagine that theirs is nicer than ours. Okay, so on your right, you're going to see these funny-looking storage bunkers. They call them igloos. There's about 10 of them back there around the corner, and they were used to store cannonballs and other munitions back when this was an active fort. Nowadays, you're more likely to see somebody pitch their pup tent in one of those to stay out of the rain. So Winter Island in today's Salem is a popular place for company outings and weddings and baby showers and things like that. I like to ride my bicycle down here. You know, we get a lot of visitors in Salem. We get 1 million visitors a year. 250,000 of them come during the month of October, which we call haunted happenings. We don't even call it October anymore. And with that many people in town, you really can't drive your car on the weekends, so I get around either by walking or riding a bicycle, and there's a bike share program in town now. So on your right is this big 18-room mansion right on the water that for many years was known as the Plummer Home for Boys. The Plummer family they were very rich, but they actually gave up their big mansion in 1855 for use as an orphanage for boys. Later, it was a reform school for boys. And it still provides services like that, but now they provide help to young people, boys and girls, coming out of the foster care system and the juvenile justice system. But what a facility, right on the water with this unbelievably nice view of the water in the town of Beverly. So, the biggest shipyard in Salem 200 years ago was on Winter Island. And we had a lot of shipyards here. You know, the South River went all the way in town as far as where the post office is now. And there were shipyards all the way into town. And Salem was known for making really high-quality ships and boats. That's part of the reason why these privateers were so successful. In many cases, these converted fishing ships could outrun and outmaneuver heavily armed British warships. And then, you know, in the next war, the War of 1812, it happened all over again with the privateers. And Salem played a big part in the War of 1812, too. We're taking you now to the Willows at the tip of our peninsula, where we're sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean the farthest. But there's a couple of things we'll show you on the way. So this is Juniper Cove, and it's a place that has a huge difference between high tide and low tide. Low tide today is at 6 p.m., so the water's going out. Now at high tide, it'll cover this stone block in front of us, but at low tide, it completely empties out. There's no water in Juniper Cove at all, just mud. All these boats will be just sitting on the mud, kind of lopsided. And here in the corner is a little beach that actually has a name. Right here. It's called Corner Beach. And that's about all I can say about it, except that it's an example of one of many very literal names here in Salem. I think we have all these literal names because they were just so old that they just didn't have more clever things to call things. Okay, on your right is a house that has an unusual stained glass window on the side. Kind of resembles peacock feathers. And it was brought up from a church in Newport, Rhode Island when this house was built. And there's a very strange tower at the top too. I don't know if you see that tower. That's an example of natural cooling from the days before they invented air conditioning. So on a hot day, they'd open up all the windows and the tower, and the convection would draw the hot air out of the roof. So this is the Willows. They planted a whole bunch of willow trees here in 1801 when there was nothing here except a tuberculosis hospital. Now in a few days, I think this weekend, they're having the Salem Jazz and Soul Festival here. There's a place for music at the end. People come here to look at the water, to the nice ocean breezes. There's an arcade for the kids. There's several fast food places, including this Clam Shack, which actually has excellent fried seafood. But this is just a shadow of what it was like 150 years ago, when the Willows was sort of like the Disney World of New England. Thousands of people would come here every day because you had some of the best seafood restaurants in New England. You had one of the first places that ever served ice cream cones in America was right here. And they had a big amusement park over here. And they had dance halls and music halls and skating rinks and water slides and a steamboat. Anyway, it all faded away a bit in the middle of the 20th century. But that's the town of Beverly across the water. And, well, if you have read the sign, you know that we're at Dead Horse Beach. Now, I wish I had a nice story to tell at this point, but I really don't, because they really did bury dead horses here in the old days. Now, that's, they had to bury them somewhere. And it worked fine for a long, long time until the Great Fire of 1914, which was the greatest disaster that ever happened to Salem. They say the ghost of Giles Corey appeared near Gallows Hill before that fire broke out that burned from west to east and burned down a third of the city. Luckily, it spared 90% of the historic buildings, but a lot of horses died fighting that fire because this was still the days of horse-drawn fire engines. So they did what they were accustomed to doing. They brought the dead horses here. They just dug a hole that was much bigger than any hole they had ever dug before and tried to bury them all. But this time it just turned into another disaster because, well, it was the middle of the summer and these crazy tides. It just didn't work out. After a couple of days, the dead horses started to float to the surface. A very awful, smelly problem, which they solved by waiting for a day when the wind was blowing toward Beverly and they had a big bonfire to burn them all up. Then they decided they would never bury any more horses on Dead Horse Beach again. And over the years, it's become a popular swimming beach. But even today, sometimes people find real horse bones in the sand. And around the first of the year, Salem residents would bring their dried out Christmas trees to Dead Horse Beach, and we have a big bonfire to burn off the Christmas trees. Pretty sure we do that because of what happened here in 1914. All right, so we're taking you back to Salem, downtown Salem, to continue the tour. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Halloween now. See, it's kind of an interesting story how we became the Halloween capital of the world, because for 200 years after the witch trials, nobody really wanted to remember them or talk about them. People were generally were ashamed of what had happened to those innocent people back here. But then at the 200th anniversary in 1892, people did start to remember. There were articles written and lectures. And there was a jeweler in a town named Daniel Lowe who created a silver souvenir spoon that had a picture of a witch flying on a broomstick on it. And he sold a lot of these, and which encouraged him to make other witch-related souvenirs. Pretty soon, people started calling Salem Witch City. And businesses started up like Witch City Plumbing. Then a few years after that, the police department decided to put a patch on their uniform showing a witch flying on a broomstick. And they put the same design on the side of their police cars. So if you see any police officers later on, check that out. But still, Halloween was not a big deal. The next thing that happened was the Bewitched TV show in 1970 had 2 Halloween episodes that told the story of the witch trials. And you know, in that TV show, Samantha was the main character, and she had a mother named Samantha, Endora, who was supposed to be a real witch from Salem. Now, So a lot of people saw that TV show. It was very popular. And now people are making an association for the first time, really, between Salem and Halloween. Then Laurie Cabot moved to town and opened up the first witch store. Then just a few months after that, the Salem Witch Museum opened up. And then Laurie Cabot became quite famous because she was being interviewed on TV so much, everybody wanted to talk to a real witch. And so the other followers of the Wiccan religion around the world really learned about Laurie Cabot and started moving to Salem. And this was really the start of Halloween being a big deal around here, the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, and Halloween has become bigger every year. This year it's going to be on a Thursday, and we're expecting about 80,000 people just for Halloween. So how many of you have seen the movie Hocus Pocus? Okay, good. A couple of shooting locations right here. The red brick building 2 doors down was the Jacob Bailey High School in the movie, where the witches were incinerated toward the end, but it wasn't the end of the witches, was it?
No.
And the place where Max first gets to talk to Allison after class was filmed on the other side of the fence, right about here. If you look back toward the high school, it looks like that scene in the movie. Except in the movie, they spray painted some of the leaves orange to make it look more like Halloween. And you might notice the pineapple designs on the top of the fence posts, especially if you get the 25th anniversary Blu-ray, with the deleted scenes and the extra content. And so when you see that fence in high definition, you'll notice those pineapple designs, which is an old Polynesian symbol of hospitality that was brought back by sea captains. So that's the Salem Common, even older than the Boston Common, and it's the birthplace of the U.S. National Guard because the local militia had their first muster here in 1636. Now this road around the Common is called Washington Square, and a lot of the mansions right here are some of the greatest mansions in Salem. And they're about as old as the ones on Chestnut Street, too. There's a giant pineapple on top of the man shell there in the middle of the Common. And we're coming up on the Witch Museum. Opened in 1972, it's the most popular tourist attraction in Salem. It's a good place to learn about what happened here in 1692 and the witches, the history of witchcraft and what witches are like today. Because remember, I told you that the Wiccans started moving here. Well, it's gotten to the point now where about 5% of our population are real witches now, if you can see that followers of the Wiccan religion are real witches. But they run all the magic stores and witch stores in town. This statue here is the statue of our founder, Roger Conant, a Puritan who founded Salem in 1626. It's not a witch. It's only a coincidence that it's right outside of the Witch Museum. And coming up on your left is the Hawthorne Hotel, built in 1925. It's our oldest and grandest hotel. There's a great Tavern on the Green here on this corner. And Nathaniel's Restaurant is on the other side, really good restaurant. They have a flag tradition here where they have 2 flagpoles, and every day they change the flags. On the first one, they rotate through the flags of the United States, and on the other flagpole, they rotate through the flags of the United Nations. Don't ask me what flag that is, because I don't know. But anyway, this hotel, everybody wants to stay there for Halloween because it's on the list of the top 10 most haunted hotels in America. Especially the 6th floor. Is anybody staying on the 6th floor today? Okay, that's good. Anyway, yeah, and also room 325 is haunted. They say that there's the faint voice of a crying child, and they can't tell where it's coming from, and it never shuts up. And the lights flicker, and the faucets turn on by themselves sometimes. They also, when they filmed Bewitched in 1970, they had a big dinner for the cast and crew, and they had a special menu prepared for them, and you can see that menu by the elevators on the first floor. That's the Crown and Shield Bentley House, built in 1727. And this next building is the Gardner Pingree, a federal mansion designed by Samuel McIntyre, built in 1805. Considered by some to be the finest looking federal home in all of New England. Okay, so we're coming back into the visitor center. We just did the